from you is, actually not that it's that big of a deal, but did you just see that last show I just did with Sam Farber from Goldin Auctions?
Yes, I did. I watched the whole thing. I was actually grading cards while I was listening, actually. Yeah.
The whole thing. Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, got to put in the work for you. It's important.
That's right. That's right. I like how you said on your on Instagram today, you felt like you're going on Conan O'Brien or something like that. Oh, that's heavy praise right there.
I mean, come on, Jeremy. We all know you get lots of views. Lots of people talk about you. You're an asset to the hobby community. You really are.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Wait, just don't stop. Keep it coming. Keep it going.
Well, can everybody see what I'm wearing? I'm wearing it for you.
Yeah.
Mr. Calgary, I'm wearing the Ducks. I mean, it's not Calgary. I don't have a Flames one. I'm sorry.
That's
but
okay.
One of my students actually, you don't mind if I just tell a quick story, right? One of my students, his brother-in-law, no, not brother-in-law. One of my students' uncle is Joshua Jackson. So this is actually his, not from the movie, but you were able to get like custom ones on eBay or something like that. So he actually gifted this to me. So it was kind of cool. Didn't get to meet Joshua Jackson. That would have been really cool. But I got to see some pictures and he told me some really cool stories. So I wear it every once in a while. And I wore it for you because Calgary, big hockey fan. I thought you'd enjoy that.
Because I'm a Canadian hockey fan. That's right. That's right. So I like to ask everybody that comes on after hours that did watch the show before. And again, to provide some continuity between the two shows. And for my own interest, what stuck out to you from that show with Sam of Goldin Auctions?
Two big things. One, November, we're going to be ready to go with this Goldin app. I think, or a Goldin new website app probably should be coming in right after that. That'd be a great idea as well. I know Heritage has one. But a great functional either app and website is going to be a great thing for them and I completely understood them starting small, making some mistakes. That's the only way you're going to learn, and working from there and getting better with it. That's really important. And it sounds like they've hired the right people from different companies, different looks at different things. And the fact that they've got I'm not going to say where the thing is streaming from because we can't, because we don't really know, but that they're going to have something that's going to be on some sort of platform that a lot of people are going to be able to see. And I think that's going to be fun because I remember Ken and Paul from 30, almost 40 years ago, doing stuff on TV and stuff like that. So great to see Ken again. He's magnanimous. He's funny. His son is funny. He's an asset to the community, just as you are. He's an important piece to this whole thing. So I think it's great, and it'll bring a lot of eyes towards all of it. So it'll be great. Those are the two big things that I picked up on.
You said that it'll be on some sort of platform. So Sam, who works at Goldin, who knows what network / platform the show The Goldin Touch will be on, he's not permitted to say that yet. But we can speculate all we want here right now. So
sure, we're gonna say if I have $100 bill, I don't have it right now on me. It's going on Netflix, and if it's not, I mean, what are we doing here? Netflix is the best streaming one. I mean, what do you want to say? You want to say Peacock? No. Paramount? No. Disney Plus is not going to go there. I don't think it's ESPN. Although
someone in the chat said ESPN on the last episode. What do you think of that?
Okay. All right. You mean the regular ESPN, or you got to get the ESPN Plus?
ESPN2, ESPN Plus. I don't know. Just because Peyton Manning is an executive producer of Goldin's show, and so someone in the chat in the last episode said, "Well, if Peyton Manning's involved, then it must be ESPN." Now, doesn't must be, but you never know. I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
It would make the most sense. I just thought it'd be fun if it was on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean that would be awesome on Netflix.
You would catch a lot more. You would catch different eyes looking at it. ESPN, it's sports fans. With this, you'd catch different eyes. The same thing happened with the HBO with Brian Gumbel doing the where he went to the national. Different people looked at that than your normal, the regular hobby people in the hobby or people in sports.
Okay, so before we say hi to the crowd in the chat, but welcome everybody. How did you, and before we hit go live here a few minutes ago, I said to you, I don't even remember how you ended up getting on the show. with me tonight because
Thanks. It makes it sound just well. I am a regular person.
Listen.
But,
I mean, hold on, David. Hold on. I'm a guy that I like to keep my emails clean. I don't like a bunch of unread emails. But for the past month, I've had one email marked as unread, and it's been from you, so that when I went to find a graphic for the YouTube thumbnail, I'd be able to find it. And so it reminds me that, well, we've had this plan for quite some time now, but I'll let you tell the story because I don't exactly remember how we got in touch in the first place.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks. Made me feel this big right now, but that's okay. You're big time, so I get it. So what happened was we have spoken on Clubhouse. It had to be March, April, May, June. I was introduced to it and came on, and some people had already known who I was and had a PSA training background. So people were asking me a lot of questions. You came on, were listening. We followed each other on there, and then you followed me and showed me some stuff that you wanted me to take a look at. And then I made a post for people that were going to the National because I couldn't go because my wife and kids said, hey, can we go on a family trip? And I said, do you want to go to Chicago? And they go, no. So we didn't go to Chicago. We're looking to probably go to Atlantic City though for next year. I haven't gone since the last Atlantic City one. So that'll be a lot of fun to do. But anyway, you and I, you said, hey, we got to catch up after I get back from the National. I said, great. We then talked when you got back, we talked back and forth, made a date. Today's that date. So we are here right now. Right
on. Yeah. And the Clubhouse connection. Clubhouse has been a great source of new relationships and good conversation. Often good conversation as well.
We won't get into the not good conversation. Absolutely. But it's great when I'm grading cards for people and pre-grading. It's great to listen to you and some of the other ones, Eric. Jordan's always funny, and Richard and everybody. Just the cast of characters, just sit there, listen, Chris, everybody just listen, and then they'll try to pull us up. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of not wanting to talk right now, but sure, I'll come on, whatever you want me to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Carvin's on there, all holding court quite a bit as well. Okay, So let's say hi to the chat. We got Troy with us. After hours is going to be great. An actual card grader. Well, we're going to get into that specifically. Fire Sports Cards. Good evening. Joe Pro says X Mint.
Ouch.
What is up, Lapper? Tyler says the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, the Mighty Ducks favorite movie of all time. Jordan, that jersey is cool. Jeremy and David, what are your one or two favorite hockey movies of all time? What are yours?
Do we want to answer right now? I mean,
yeah, why not?
I love the Mighty Ducks. I'm not going to say Slapshot because I actually did. I liked it. I didn't love it. Miracle's a great one as well too. I mean, I just took two of the big ones. What are you going to throw at?
I'm not Slapshot either. Mine's Youngblood. Youngblood was my favorite hockey movie. I liked the Mighty Ducks as well. That was a feel good movie for sure. But I liked Youngblood back in the day. And of course, Threat Level Midnight is probably my favorite hockey movie of all time. You familiar? You're familiar.
Yes.
Threat Level Midnight all day long. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Troy says red wavy wig, then maybe Jeremy could pass his Conan for sure. James agrees on Netflix. Patrick Hero says HBO, maybe. Tyler says Ken was on IG Live a few weeks ago and he said History Channel and A&E were small networks compared to the one his show is on.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, those are big channels that are connected to other bigger channels that are part of a network, as we know. So he's saying what he's got to say. That's what we love Ken for.
Exactly. Oh, there's some good comments coming. The Big Unit says ESPN 8, the Ocho could
Ouch.
be. Chrissy Buckets in the house. Good evening, Chris. We got Birds on a Bat. What's up, David? Collection says, I think if it's going on Netflix, we'll see another boom in the hobby. Netflix touches everyone. This is the comment you made. That's a great comment. Collection SML. Colin Murray, good evening. Todd McDonald, great to have you. Overtime Grading, good evening. Lapper says, won't catch a Canadian talking about Miracle. I don't know. Still pretty cool thing, but I hear you. The big unit says Michael Scarn. Exactly. Michael Scarn is the main character.
I know that you saw me laughing. I wasn't going to give it away. I wanted people to have to go. And
this still doesn't give it. Really doesn't yet give it away to people who don't know. But yes, Michael Scarn is the lead character in the movie Threat Level Midnight. And then Patrick says, "Oh, a channel, not a platform. Could be." Jordan Riker says Drive to Survive had a decent impact on F1's growth on Netflix, so that wouldn't be terrible. No, it had a great impact, I think. I mean, it got me. I am now an F1 fan. I only have 2 cards in my whole collection ever since watching that whole series back in April, David, but I watched the whole thing. I really fell in love with F1, the whole thing. And now I've got my PVR set to record the races because they start at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, my time, the Russian Grand Prix. But I can't wait to watch it tomorrow before I do my collectible live show. And then tomorrow late night, I'm hosting a big F1 Dynasty break on here.
50 boxes.
50. Yeah, they're not mine. They're my friend Steven's. He's got these things. Carvin's going to join us and he's going to bust them where he just wanted to do it on the channel. I said, yeah, happy to do it. And of course, I enjoy F1. See, when I started collecting, and I didn't collect hard, but I picked up I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 Pokemon cards a year and a half ago. And it didn't stick because I had no nostalgic connection to Pokemon at all. But I have a nostalgic connection already to F1 because I spent a month watching that documentary, 30 episodes, and I just really enjoy it. And I'm already starting to enjoy watching it while my son plays around me. So I'm building those memories already. And doesn't mean I'm going to go crazy on the cards. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm excited to see what comes out of these boxes tomorrow night.
Got it.
Jordan Riker calls it right. Michael Scarn and Threat Level Midnight is from the TV show The Office. Michael Scott, Agent Michael Scarn. Good evening, Steve Sir. Happy collecting. Patrick says Ken Goldin premieres right after The Masked Singer. And Jordan says, how many people have you turned on to Drive to Survive? I don't know, Jordan, how many people, but I tell anyone who talks about F1 with me, I say, well, I watched Drive to Survive and it made me into an F1 fan. So did you see it, David?
I have not seen it yet. We've just been busy doing binging other shows and stuff. I have not watched it. I did watch Ford versus Ferrari. I enjoyed that. Not the same thing, but I get the point. I used to watch F1 back when I was younger, like Schumacher and a couple other racers. And I know of Lewis Hamilton and Verstappen and stuff like that because I do grade some of those and stuff like that. And I know the whole Topps Chrome debacle and with the printing errors and issues and stuff like that. It is it's interesting because F1 fans don't collect. They didn't used to collect cards. So it's different, right? You're now collecting it because you fell in love with it, right? So it's still like a burgeoning market. It's still starting. It hasn't reached its peak yet. I mean, some of it has, but not all of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's so just to touch on that here, Tyler says he started watching it because of me, which is, I mean, but it's just like me telling anybody, how everybody in the audience, yourself, myself, people are always saying, oh, you got to watch this, you got to watch that, telling you what their best shows are. I can't help it that I sit here on Saturday night, every Saturday for a year and a half now. You're going to talk about what you're watching, especially if it ties into the hobby a little bit. And some people are going to take that and give it a watch. But, it's a really interesting program and series. I recommend it. You and your wife could get into it. It's because it's about the people behind the scenes. It's also about the races, but it's you get to know all the people, not just the 20 racers and a few extras and the team principals, the ownership. You get to see some of the engineers. It really is a behind the scenes look. That was such a smart marketing move by them. I really loved it. Jim says, have you watched the Schumacher documentary on Netflix? Jordan asked the same question. I haven't seen it. I saw it. I saw the thumbnail on Netflix today. I will watch it for sure because I want to learn some of the history now. I don't know much of the history. I know I've heard of Schumacher my whole life, but I don't know the specifics. And I think I want to learn some of the history of the sport now because I find, David, on a Sunday afternoon or late morning, depends on what, I will just put it on and just watch it. And it's a soothing, watching those races. It's a soothing thing. I don't know how to describe it, but it's becoming part of my routine.
I get it. I totally understand.
Okay, I'm going to do the last couple of comments here. Frank Schneider says Youngblood, very good. The hockey movie, yes. James says, I don't think people are collecting F1. They're flipping F1. I don't know. I collected a couple cards. I don't plan on flipping them, but people are going to flip anything if there's an opportunity to do that. But people will also be collecting it. There's going to be both. I know for a fact there's people collecting it. A buddy of mine, he's going to open 50 boxes tomorrow. He's not flipping them. He's collecting them. You have something to say to that, David?
He's not wrong. I think there's a space for both, right? I think the higher end pieces are not being flipped. I think that those people are taking it as a long-term investment piece, or that they're really hobbyists of, they really like Lewis Hamilton or Schumacher, or the guys that we've talked about, right? But the lower end stuff, yeah, I totally believe that that's being flipped, and that makes sense. You know, the hobby boxes of the top Sapphire went from buying it at $200 to $400, they're now $1,600 a box. That has to be a flip. I mean, you have to move that stuff at some point, you know?
Yeah. No, exactly. I think but the same thing can be said for basketball cards and UFC cards and hockey cards and baseball. There's people flipping anything because there's an opportunity there, but they're flipping them to who? Because if are you flipping them to somebody who's buying them at fair market value, and then they're going to flip them? What, they're going to wait? They're going to expect to flip them in 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months, 2-3 years. I mean, there's got to be both for the ecosystem to work. If not, as Tyler says right here, that's why I don't believe in it long term. It could change. It could change. He says it's being flipped more than collected. Could be. Could be.
He's not wrong, because as I started with saying, F1 collectors are not collectors of cards necessarily. Most of them. So once that changes, then that's a different conversation. But for right now, the past dictates what we currently are in. So that's all I'm saying about that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but also consider that some F1 fans are collectors that never had anything to collect, because collecting isn't just, this can stem from your early childhood, your formative years too, right? So
Yes.
some of them are like, finally there's something to collect. You hear Tanya on Clubhouse. Tanya collects, and she's a huge F1 fan, so she's not in it to flip, right?
Right.
So there are people out there that are collecting it, but I believe what the sentiment here is that many people are buying it strictly with the intention of flipping it, which is the way the hobby works to a large degree. Jordan says Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher are LeBron and Jordan. And funny enough, I for some reason I was thinking Verstappen, but yeah, that goes. I think that just goes without saying. That those two are kind of at the height of it all. Jordan says this conversation seems like it's taken a slight turn from what you may have expected. My apologies for bringing it up. We will get into grading within 60 seconds. Jim says I collect vintage F1. Joe, having been a pro, does David examine each and every card with his grader's eyes on? Before we get to that, Mark Santucci, good evening. Jim says Ayrton Senna is the F1 GOAT.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Senna. Okay, let's go to grading, because that's what I touted you as, was a professionally trained grader. Now, yes. I may have sort of stretched on that a little bit, but I don't know for sure. I'm going to let you, because we had a conversation. I feel I understand it, but I want to let you explain to the audience. How are you, what qualifies you to grade cards? How were you trained? And have you ever worked for a grading company?
No, I've never officially collected a paycheck for a grading company. No, absolutely not. But what happened was I was big into cards ever since I was young. And I would go to different shows once I was into my college years, so I can go on my own. And I would go to a lot of the New York shows, the Chantilly show, the Philly show, everything on the Northeast, and would hit and see PSA there all the time. People would be submitting. This was right when they started, right? So it was them. BGS jumped in, right? But there was not a lot of grading. It was not a big deal, right? So I wasn't sitting behind. I was, as they were taking submissions, I ended up befriending a lot of the guys. Had their text message. Or not text message. We would call and stuff like that. And I would go and meet them, and I would sit, and they would show me everything. They would like, you're really interested in this? And I'm like, yeah, but I can't go move to California. They're like, all right, then if you really want to learn, Here's how you learn. And they would show me everything. I got to touch and hold a lot of the cards that were going to be graded by many of the on the PSA registry cards that are up there now. All the amazing cards, a lot of the T206s, the 52 tops, the 51 Bowmans, all of everything. I got to see it all and look at the different examples. And it's just interesting that I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. But with the grading, the way I explained it to somebody is that you have to, just like how Malcolm Gladwell says, talks about the 10,000 hours that you have to put in order to be an expert in something. That 10,000 hours I put in a long time ago, and I've just been continually adding to it. Now, if you don't know my background, I'm also a school teacher. So I actually teach 8th grade science, and that's my regular job. But then on the side, as well as being a dad and, a free Uber driver for my kids, right? I also do this pre-grading for people, right? And so the grading piece, I can look at a card, and yes, I do look at it. I think one of your commenters asked, do you always have your grading eyes on? Yes, now, because I'm doing it for people regularly and I'm grading 500 to 1,000 cards a day just through emails. We'll get to that part of how I do that. And then they get sent to me and I do the grades there too. I'm doing a lot of the grading and was shown how to grade and understanding the differences between a 2 versus a 3 and a 4 and a 5. And PSA's website wasn't the way that it is now, where it is a little bit clearer word wise, but sometimes it can be a little bit vague in different ways. And what I try to do for people as part of Guess the Grade is kind of take the subjectivity out of it and explain to them as much as possible. Have a conversation with people so that they really understand why I'm giving them that number and really talk with them. And I think that that's the next piece that I think some of the grading companies might do, is that there's the grade, but then there's something that tells them or shows them where the problem is, so that they're not questioning why they got a 5 and they thought they were going to get a 9 or an 8 or something like that.
Right. So let me back to the training piece, or the way that you gained your skills. I want you to, can you paint the picture, like really describe what it was like when you were at, say, the East Coast National or the Chantilly show? PSA is there set up taking submissions, and you said that you got to touch and feel these cards. So I think a lot of people might be like, wait a second, they let you touch and feel someone else?
No.
But, right? But
so what happened is, they're in the holders, right?
That's why I want you to paint the picture of what the situation looked like when you were at the show. Where were you sitting? How did they impart their knowledge onto you? How did that knowledge transfer actually occur?
Okay, so I would sit off on the side, not part of PSA at all. So I would be sitting off on the side, and some of the different graders, after they would collect submissions, or the submission people, they would be holding them. And obviously there's an insurance piece and stuff like that. But I would look at a lot of them, and they were able to show them to me. And I was able to be taught, like, this is what you're looking at. This is how you do this. And they would show me the different pieces of how to do that. So there's certain things that I can't, it's because I didn't actually, I don't know how to explain it. I'm struggling with how to explain it. So they would show me with a jeweler's loop, and the piece that I have now, the magnifying lens right here, right? So they would show me the different things, the tools that they would use. So I learned directly from them, as opposed to having been, looking at a website or someone else doing it. So
as opposed to being self-taught sort of thing.
Yeah, it was a self-taught piece, because but it was me having the conversations with them and asking them the questions, right? So it's not just me, right? Because there's an insurance issue, and I'm not talking that I was touching other people's cards. It was that I was self-taught, but then also taught asking them questions, which people don't really get to do with any of the graders. But I was able to see, and they would show me, like, this is what we talk about when we're talking about this looking like this looking like that. This is how much whiteness can really be there in order to be a 7. This is how much is when we're looking at these edges, this rounding right here and this rounding right here equals a 5 or a 4, right. That sort of thing. Does that make more sense? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I appreciate that. So just for me to explain to you what I'm hearing now is really that you had access to these graders, and they were willing to share with you what they were doing as they would do it and show you examples. And you spent several hours with them asking questions because you were interested.
Yes.
And that's how you got your insights into it. So when we say you're a professionally trained grader, it's not like you went through a course or you were training for employment, but you did experience great card grading training by card grading experts, even though it wasn't formal. Is that
right? Exactly. And now I'm at the point where, I think really what card grading is, it's about not just you having that eye, but being able to explain it to someone else. Right. And that's what I've been trying to do through Guess the Grade, is to show people and explain to them why it is the way it is. And yes, I mean, you could say that I'm not professionally trained, but a lot of the newer PSA graders have a lot less experience than a lot of our bulk submitters that are out there. I'm not going to name all the names of the great bulk submitters, but we know who they are, right? They have more experience than a lot of the graders. And I think that that's a key piece. So, I mean, you putting your hands on all the different types of cards, being able to meet with someone and talk with someone and being able to see and understand what they looked at and what they saw is a key thing to look at when looking at being trained by a different grading company and or being able to look at basically what we're talking about and the understanding the difference between a 3, a 4, or a 5, or the 7, 8, or 9 differences as well.
Right. And so you're pretty confident now in your ability to look at a card of any condition and kind of like, say this is going to be a 3. And when you assign a grade or, give your friend, your customer, your the fellow hobbyist, your guessed grade, even though you're not guessing, you're using some. But when you give them, I know you're kind of.
Well, that's why I called it Guess the Grade initially. My son and I came up with it, and he's like, "Oh, we'll just guess the grades of different cards." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? That's actually a great Instagram name." And my wife actually was like, "That was a genius name right there." But in some ways, that's how people think that the grading is, that it's a guess. And really, that's what I'm trying to do, is to educate people and take the guessing piece out of it, so it doesn't look like that to people and they don't get upset by the fact of, well, this person really messed this up, or how do you know, like, and I want to be clear to people and not just say it's a 9 because I said so or whatever. Right. And I feel like when some of these people ask different graders or ask people that used to be in grading, they don't have a clear-cut answer. And that's really what I'm trying to get to, is not just reciting PSA's website, right?
Well, that was my next question, David. Are you when you're guessing grades, are you guessing PSA or BGS or both, or will you ask, well, what grading company do you want my guess for? Like, that's because
can we just talk about that for a second, Jeremy? Yeah. So it shouldn't be like that, right? I mean, in a perfect world, you shouldn't have to ask which one it is. They should all kind of be on the same sort of level.
Well,
right?
except for the fact that they have their own published set of standards for what mint is to them. Now, I'm not saying I don't agree with you. I'm just saying that for you to do your job properly or your service properly, it's like, okay, well, what company are you sending this to? Because now, well, as we know, there's no 9.5, so that adds a new potential answer for you. But you also might know from your experience that maybe some Beckett grades are going to be higher than PSAs or vice versa. And you might know how that goes by different brands or different eras, because you've been doing it so long. So many cards have been through your hands. So so do you ask that question, or are your guesses all based on the PSA grading scale and standard?
So most of the time I'll just give them a number equivalent. But if they're asking PSA because it's the hot one to use, I'll usually give them the PSA one. But if they ask, oh, what do you think for SGC? Then I'll definitely look at it. I don't look at it differently, but I just know where SGC is at, and I know where Beckett is at with their grading. So I'm usually pretty close on that. And you'll see on my, what I do for, I'll do some posts on Instagram of people will send me their submissions and the grades that they got and what I had told them. And sometimes I make mistakes. We all do, right? But usually I'm pretty close to on the mark with many of the ones that I give for grades. Even the hard ones are really actually 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, the ones and twos, because sometimes with the older vintage cards, as you know, there's huge value differences between a 1 and a 2, and sometimes a 2 and a 3. And you really have to, it's not just the rounded corners anymore. You have to look at how big is the crease? How many creases are there, right? Is it going all the way through? There's all those little intricacies that you have to look at that usually I ask to see the card, like in person if I can, or just higher res photos. And usually I can give them a good estimate. But remember also, I'm not charging for this. I'm doing it to help people. And that's really the main piece of this whole thing for me, is I'm learning it more, but I'm also trying to help others, because I just find it's really important for this hobby. And for, as you said, it's an ecosystem and it's part of the lifeblood. And I think you used another word on the show before. What you wanted Ken to add to. Anyway, but it's I don't know if you remember the word either. But
pie.
Anyway, it's
growing the pie.
Yes, the pie. Yes, the pie metaphor. Yes, the pie metaphor. Adding to the pie. That's what this is my piece to the pie. This is what I'm trying to do. Something different for people. Instead of just doing the work for them, I try to help them. And that's really what I'm looking at doing.
Awesome, man. No, it's great. So the big question for me, whenever it comes to any of these things, is whenever it comes to grading a card remotely, when you don't have it in hand, is surface. So with your free service, which is a very generous thing, you're giving your time, you're giving your expertise. It's a wonderful thing, really, and kudos to you for offering to help the hobby that way. How do you approach the surface when it comes to assigning your final guess?
So what I try to do is have a conversation with someone, knowing the card and knowing what the known issues are on that card, especially with prism cards. It's usually a dimple or a light scratch, knowing that certain scratches on the back because of how the roller rolled out the printer roller actually rolled out the card. How deep are those print lines? Are they very noticeable? Those are the sort of conversations that I have with people. And most of the time also, and we were talking about this as well with just a couple of days ago when we did a quick conversation, it's also being able to hold the card at a different angle and being able to see the reflection of it as well. Because then some of those, what people get hit for the word, get hit the most often is for like small little tiny like pinholes. They weren't noticed as much with the older grading, but now they are picked up on very easily, especially because of the newer technology, like I showed you, the light and stuff like that. They're picked up more easily. And from there, I'm able to kind of help them. Getting back to what I was trying to say, sorry. With the surface piece, I usually try to have a conversation with them about that. Sometimes they want to have it and sometimes they don't. And I just try to tell them, so it's this grade just as long as the surface is perfect. And then someone will come back to me and say, oh, I got a 9. I'm like, well, what do you see is on there? And I try to teach them, right? Ask them questions about stuff like that, just so that they get a better understanding, because I don't think people want to spend that money and then get a 7 or an 8 when they were expecting a 10. So it's kind of trying to help people, lead people in the right direction so they can make better decisions for themselves with grading.
Okay. Now I want your video quality is just sort of, it may be better right now. I think it just got better, but you were very staticky there for a while. And I'm wondering if anyone in the house might be streaming anything right now.
It's midnight. No, everybody's asleep.
Everyone's sleeping. Okay.
Shouldn't be happening.
Okay, good. Just making sure that it's just a normal sort of thing in the system. So that's totally cool. Okay, we had some really good questions coming in, and I want to go to this one here, back here from Skep. He says, what archival examples and tools do you have to not only grade, but also accurately authenticate? Now, I think we have to understand to the audience that David is not and I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not out there claiming to be the God's gift to card authentication and grading. You're just helping people pre-grade their cards so they can have an idea of what they might get based on your experience. But do you also, when you provide your service, do you look to authenticate as well? Have you ever had someone ask you to look at a card and you're like, wait, I don't think that's real?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have some older examples of some, I don't have them handy on me right now, but I also have some older auction books. I keep auction books. That's very helpful for a lot of archival examples. I keep a lot of I try to keep, especially if somebody sends a fake card, I'll ask, can I keep it? Right? It's helpful for me. I also have examples, as I can quickly show you, of all different types of cards, of all different years, of all different qualities. So I can actually match them up. So if someone sends me a card, I can match them up, measure them, but then also, have them side by side. It's really helpful. That's one of the PSA graders actually showed me that. It's a key piece to be able to have a Rolodex, basically, of different examples to be able to match up things as you're looking at them, especially when you're looking at vintage. A lot of the newer stuff, you're not really worried about that. Is the video okay? And we're doing okay with video now?
Still, it's a little choppy, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
We can hear you fine. We can hear you fine. So don't worry about the video. It'll work itself out.
Okay. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. So that's a great question. I do have some archival stuff, but a lot of the stuff is in here. And I think that over time, putting it out there is something that I want to do as well. Putting it out there for people, because you can go to blowout forums, right? You can go to different websites that have how to be able to spot a fake Gretzky, how to be able to spot a fake Jordan. I think one of the key pieces for me is eventually to have a place where one place that kind of houses it all. There's a couple of different websites that have a lot of it, especially everything that was I don't want to go into past history too much, but Blowout has everything saved of the whole PWCC, Probstein, all the trimming stuff and all that stuff. That's a great resource to be able to look at a lot of that stuff. That's saved, and you can easily archive or look at a lot of that stuff. And I do look back at that because they've done a lot of the work with a lot of those cards to look at that. And a lot of those guys, I don't want to shout them all out, but they do an amazing job of the work that they've done to be able to look at the differences very systematically and see that. Sorry to go on a tangent there, but that sort of thing as far as with like archived examples.
Yeah, no. It's great that you have that stack of cards. I take fake Gretzky rookies with me I have 4 fake Gretzky rookies that I take to shows to show people, because people often ask me, how do you tell if I get, when I'm at a card show, people bring me cards to look at for my opinion on quality and authenticity. And the most common one is the Gretzky rookie. So I keep a collection of fake ones so I can help educate people. I think it's good to do, but on the flip side, it's good to keep authentic copies of cards for that in-person comparison. Okay, I want to get to the next question from Troy. It says, David, you say you like to explain why a person got a certain grade. Do you appreciate the grading companies with subgrades, or do you prefer PSA style with no subgrade?
I own both. So I appreciate both, actually. I appreciate how Nat feels that he doesn't want to change, put a new spoke in the wheel and change have the 9.5 for them. I understand why they don't do that. And I think that we can then talk about why possibly people have seen that their PSA's grading has changed, because I think the two kind of connect together. But to answer your question, I love the fact that BGS does what they do. I'm a huge BGS fan. I believe that, and you and I have spoken about this, and I've talked with other industry experts. In the end, I believe that BGS and PSA should be here, not off. You know what I'm saying? As far as popularity, what they're selling for. And really, in the end, they don't. Because, as you know, Jeremy, a lot of the top BGS cards have always hit those high marks on Goldin Auctions. BGS cards, not always PSA cards. Just saying, I think when it comes down to it, the real collectors, the people that are not just investing but collectors, really love the BGS. And I love SGC, and I know some of the graders. As I told you, I met a lot of the graders through PSA. Some of them moved on to SGC. Some of them moved on to CSG. And I follow the graders. So I'm going to use a company based on guys that I know. Just like you would use for your business, right? You're going to use and talk with people that you know that you trust. Those are the companies that I use. And that's the ones that a lot of people that I talk to and work with, that's the ones that I recommend for them as well.
I'm with you on that 100%. I want to go to Joe Perot's question. He says, SGC is highly regarded for true vintage stuff. Does David have any reflections on how the perception of SGC has changed or not changed over the years? And it's a great question because I remember in the early 2000s, early mid 2000s, there were more SGC cards on the floor of the National than Beckett graded, that's for sure. And there were more, most of the cards in SGC holders were vintage. And by vintage, I mean like pre-war, like pre-1950 sort of thing. So
that's what I collect. I collect those SGC slabs, the old ones, and the T206s, right, and the 205s. That's my sweet spot, because if you've looked over the past 100 years, they never go down, right? Those never go down, and they're amazing, beautiful cards. And that's the kind of, actually have over there the T206 book done by the Zapala family, and they did a great job of just explaining to people so that if they want to get into collecting those, it's a great book. But back to what Joe was saying, Joe, that's a great question. Yes, so SGC, the older labels are kind of revered in our hobby, and I love those. And I see some people trying to crack them and then flip them into PSA 10s, and it's worked for some, right? I actually prefer to leave them that way. I have a couple of older ones that have stayed that way, and I think because there was different things that happened. There was if I remember, they got bought out, or they were the company switched hands a couple times, or I don't know the whole history, so I don't want to say something incorrect, but I do know that what they were and what they are now are two different entities. But I do know that I have liked what has been happening with SGC as of recently, because I believe that they have actually changed. They're not just throwing out easy 10s. That's been talked about among different bulk submitters, that they do easy 10s, or that they're not seen as being the best out there. And I don't see that anymore. I see a lot of the stuff, and I actually just made a recent post about this on Instagram, that people that are sending into SGC, and I will, I'll match up what I said versus what SGC gives them, and we're spot on. It wasn't that case anymore. Before, I would give it a 9 or a 9.5, and they were getting 10s, but now they're actually getting 9.5s, which I really appreciate. That they're seeing that they have a really good piece of the market right now, and they're grading the cards appropriately. And I definitely see them as moving back up into the same level as PSA and BGS. Hope I explained everything and answered that one.
Yeah, no,
as best I
could. Good insight. I appreciate it. I think that would have sufficiently answered Joe's question from your and I agree. Like, it's my understanding is that SGC is under new, if not ownership, management than it was back in the 2000s, when it was the between them and PSA as far as the go-to for pre-war. And I think they might have actually led that battle for quite a while. And now it's run by a new group of people, a new management. And again, my understanding, I've never spoken to the SGC, to people at SGC. It's just hasn't come up yet for me. But as far as the perception, because that, and from my perspective, I think it's kind of gone a bit of up and down sort of thing. Start very respected back in the 2000s, maybe the 90s and 2000s, and then went through a bit of a period where it lost some of that, and now I think it's gaining it back, is what I can tell. I picked up a few cards in SGC holders at the National, and I bought them for the card, but they look great in those holders, and it's not like I'm not about to go cross everything I have over to SGC, but that's not a knock against SGC. That's just, I'm happy with what I have. So, but I guess to summarize, I'm not going to not buy a card because it's in an SGC holder. I have SGC cards in my collection, some important ones, and I'm very happy with them as is. So Okay, let's go to the next question from DR. This is a kind of a neat question. Do you think there needs to be more variation on the grade of a 1? And I say, David, it's a neat question because to me, and DR, I don't know if you've seen it differently, but to me, I've seen wide variation on 1s because you can't go any lower, right? So there's going to be, I believe that's where you'll have probably the widest variation in grades, because some 1s are beautiful, but they have a pinhole through them, so they're automatically a 1, and some 1s were crumpled up and spread back out and put into a slab. So how do you respond to this comment?
Well, that DR, I don't know where you got that's a great question, and thank you for the comment about the Mighty Ducks jersey. I think the way to look at it is, they have the 1.5 out there, and I think that's an important marker in some ways to be able to help you a little bit. But yes, take the 1.5 out of there. I think that's what you're looking at now. Are we talking about an SGC 1? Are we talking about a PSA 1? Which one are we talking about, right? So PSA. I'll just say that it's a PSA 1. There is a wide range, right? Because if you look at the wording on the website, it allows for, it's sort of vague, but it allows for a wide range. And you're absolutely right. But I think that happens with a couple different card grades, especially and I've talked about this on different posts, that there's many different types of PSA 10 Jordans, right? There's a wide range of them, and they'll range from cards that are going to sell for $350 to cards that are going to sell for $750 and upwards, because they just look different. I think that, and my mind's going, that's why I'm kind of thinking as we're going with this, I think that's the next piece that maybe the AI helps us with in the future, right? Maybe the computer grading is able to make it less subjective and more computerized so that you get to a closer number. Maybe we want that, maybe we don't. I say that a lot because computers are great, and sometimes they're not for different purposes.
Yeah, fair stuff. Christina's PC, good evening, Christina, says, hi, gents. Does Happy Gilmore count as a hockey and golf movie, or just golf? I'm going to give it both, Christina. Any movie, number one with Adam Sandler, because he's a hockey fan, probably is a hockey movie. Pretty much, if Adam Sandler is in it, it's a hockey movie. That's just by default. So definitely does apply. Next comment I want to get your thoughts on, David, is from Brian Basketballs. He says, grades of 5 to 7 by any grading company is subjective. If you cover the grade, you wouldn't be able to tell. How do you respond to that comment, that opinion? Now, let me, before you speak, David, because we are live right now. There's no gimmies. There's no mulligans here. Once you say it, you've said it. And I live with this every Saturday night. And sometimes we can say things that we don't mean. It happens. But take a second, organize your thoughts.
I mean, Jeremy, I was stuttering before to try to explain the whole grading story, right? Because I was nervous thinking about how to explain this properly, right?
Don't worry about it.
That.
My whole point is you're allowed to not articulate perfectly. We can't all be Chris
we can't all be Sam. So well spoken as Sam is, right? I mean, I'm a school teacher. If I'm in front of my students, I'm not making any mistakes. I mean, I am making mistakes, but I'm not nervous. I'm not stuttering or anything. And everything just flows fine. But in front of you, you start to second guess yourself. So grades of 5 to 7, Brian, that's a really great comment. That's 100% not true. And I I'm not trying to be rude to you. And please don't think it's because I know more than you. It's not.
Just explain. No, it's all good. It's all good.
No,
I don't think I disagree with the comment too, David. But just explain explain why it's not true.
So yes, it's hard with 5 through 7. You're absolutely right, Brian. That's why some people can't pick it up, and sometimes it's set dependent. With the vintage stuff, I can easily tell 5, 6, or 7 with because there's certain markers and. We can also, Brian, I hope that you follow me on Instagram and we can DM and talk about this, because I can show you stuff and talk to you that we can take up less time of this wonderful live show, but to explain the 5, 6, 7. But it really comes down to that there are certain markers and certain amounts of whiting on the side of the edges. Because really at that point, you're looking at the whiting of the edges. You're looking at the corners rounding, if there's any rounding at all. The centering piece is, I think, what you're kind of thinking about. If I'm wrong, that's fine. We can discuss that more because I'm not actually speaking to you directly. But I think the centering piece is the subjective piece that I think you're talking about. But I can show you the other pieces of the 5, 6, and 7 that kind of bring that together so that it brings the whole piece so that you understand why it is a 5, why it is a 6, why it is a 7. Because with the centering piece, that can be where you could see subjectivity a little bit. But that's also why, we have things like these wonderful things like these, the Grade Master centering tools, so that there's a number that's actually equated to it. So you actually can prove that it's a 65-35 or 70-30 or something like that.
People often, as I mentioned earlier, they bring cards to me at card shows and say, what do you think this would grade? And I have an opinion on it, because oftentimes when I'm set up at a card show, I've got a PSA 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 Wayne Gretzky rookie, for example, in my showcase. So I can look at a 5, 6, and a 7 and sort of tell the differences. And I feel like I can make a pretty good estimate on any vintage card as far as where it's going to grade, anywhere from 1 to 9, 1 to 10 even. Now, I'm no expert. I'm no expert like you, but you know what it's like. You do it long enough, I can look at a card. I got a pretty good feeling if that's a 4, 5, 6, or a 7 pretty quick. And then you got to go into a more detailed review, or a more magnified review to look for the subtleties and all that. But at first glance, if you're just looking at corners, edges, and centering, I feel like it's not that hard to determine between a 4, 5, 6, or a 7, or even a 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
Like said,
I didn't get into the microscope piece because he was from what he was saying. I wasn't going to get into, well, I'd use a jeweler's loop or the high-powered lens. And please, guys, don't use anything more than 10x. I mean, there's no reason to go. Somebody was showing me like a 40x lens. I'm like, there's no reason to get that big. But anyway, to go back to what you were saying, yeah, absolutely. I can easily show you. And I understand where, if you don't do grading a lot, but you do it for yourself, but you don't have a lot of that 5, 6, 7, I could understand where you would say that.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I get the comment too. It's but I think with more and more experience, I don't know Brian Basketball's experience at all,
right?
But he may be very experienced. And that's a fair comment and opinion from what he's seen. I feel like if you have more and more experience, you're going to be able to tell those differences even just without magnification, unless there's one of those technical issues that you just can't see, which happens in many cases. Let's go down to Daniel A's question. David, do you ever give advice on a possible cross grade or a regrade for a card that is already graded, or do you only deal with raw?
So the answer to the question is, do you ever give advice on a possible cross grade? Yes. Regrade? Yes. And something that is already graded? Yes. And I also deal with raw. So yes, all of those. So yes, I can. And you can always just DM me through Instagram. We can discuss it more there. You can show me what you got. I also like to hear the background of it. And sometimes I'll do a little bit of quick research for you as well. Because really quick, there was an Adrian Peterson exquisite card that had a bad patch in it. And I think it was Kyle, I think it's Kyle in Wax Museum Podcast, actually messaged about it. I might be wrong. So if Kyle's listening, I just gave you cool credit, but I'm not sure which one it was. But I remember finding it and saying, this is actually a fake patch. Don't buy this sort of thing. So it's having that Rolodex of hobby knowledge and always constantly looking and seeing different things and seeing. And it's also going to be interesting because I think it's going to be harder and harder to be able to do crossovers once the whole, and I think Nat's already talked about it with Gentleman and also the fingerprinting, the digital fingerprinting. It's going to make things a heck of a lot harder to do crossovers. It really, really is.
Yeah. You mentioned Kyle Wax Museum podcast. I listened to his podcast. I really enjoy it, and I hope he gets. I hope he gets his Taco Bell sponsorship that he's working so hard to get. Troy says SGC is just as good or better than PSA. Just everyone wants that high value PSA slab. I have no problem with SGC in my collection. Rich Frank, absolutely. Keep SGC for my PC. I like the last sentence. I trust that grade. That's very, very important, that comment right there. I trust that grade. And it's a personal trust. It's an individual thing, right? And so there's two things though, and he says for my PC, another key part of the comment here, same with Troy's comment, I believe, for my collection. So it's like, does that mean that the people are willing to, for their, again, personal collection, hold cards in SGC, but when it comes to, I think what it's saying is that people just recognize that the hobby assigns more value to PSA slabs than SGC slabs for same graded cards, maybe even similar graded cards. And so that's just it's kind of like, it is what it is. We got to accept that. So if it's for your personal collection, hey, you may as well buy an SGC 9 over a PSA 9 because you're going to pay less for it because that's what the market dictates. And you're probably going to get, and if you're Rich or Troy, you're getting a grade that you trust, which is very, at the end of the day, buy the card, not the grade, buy the card, not the slab. And if that makes you happy and you trust it, then yeah, all the power to you. I think that's a great approach. What do you think?
And just because an influencer or some numbers right now tell you that PSA is the best, doesn't mean that that's necessarily true in the end. Or those of us like yourself and I and many people that are in the chat, hi Christina and everybody else, they know that even though we're in that current like PSA is king, and I do love PSA. I did the on-the-job training with them, but I know that the other companies are just as good. They have good graders at many of the other ones, and I trust the graders, as you said, right? I trust who I know is there doing the work. So that's a key piece for me.
For me, I trust the graders at CSG because I know them and they came from Beckett grading, right?
Yep. Yeah. Andy is amazing. Oh my God, he's an amazing grader. I trust him with anything. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but the problem I have with that, and I love this, I love the plastic slab, but the label detracts overall from the looks of the card. And to me, and that's just me, that's my personal opinion, the label, if I tell you what, if they fix that label from being just a bunch of empty white space, if push came to shove and something happened, I would, that's a direction I could see myself going for a lot of my personal collection cards. But I won't sub to them because I don't like that label. I love the guys. I love what they bring to the table, but unfortunately, I also am cognizant and I put value to the overall appeal of looking to the item myself. And that thing, I just can't believe that's what they went with. But that's just me for personal stuff.
So that they're connected with the whole other comic. They're part of that whole universe of the comics and everything else that they grade too. And sure. The comic grading, people said the same thing about the comic grading, but those do very well now. I mean, in the beginning, that's what they said about them. And I believe that over time, maybe they'll change a little bit of it. And I get what you're saying, but never once. And I get DMs regularly with people asking about crossing over other slabs. I never get one about CSG. And I look at CSG slabs every day, all day, and they're always spot on. I cannot find fault in CSG slabs. And that, I'm not saying that I'm an industry expert, right? But I have a lot of experience. As I said earlier, my 10,000 hours, I put it in on grading. So I can say that I have a lot of experience. I can tell you that CSG, I don't question their stuff. I just don't. The grade is the grade right there. Yeah.
No, it's all good, right? I mean, it really just. I agree. Like I wish their label was something that I liked. I wish I liked the looks of the label. And
you know what?
David,
we'll do it separately. We'll design it. We'll just send it to them.
I just finished saying, buy the card, not the grade. Buy the card, not the slab. I stand by that, but at the same time, I also stand by I want to enjoy looking at my item. So the card, when it's in the slab, I'm not taking it out. Maybe I will, but in general, I don't take cards out of slabs. So that's what it is. I might just wait for another copy of the card I like just as much, but that is presented in a way that I enjoy more. So
agreed.
Yeah, but okay, well, let's keep going. I mean, I like everything else about that company, what they're doing, except for that one detail. Okay, DR, how do you protect your ungraded cards that you enjoy? I personally top loader and sleeve is how I do it. That's what anything different there from you, David? No.
I don't put them into a binder lid that I used to do when I was a kid.
No,
I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, same here. Just some real low end base sets. Like Rich Frank says, I don't care about centering for my PC sets. I want clean corners. See, I love this comment because that's fine. Like not everybody cares. Believe it or not, not everybody cares about centering. The hobby, there's this narrative that centering is the most important aspect of a card. And it might be, if you took a vote, maybe 95% of the people put centering as number one, but Rich is in the other 5, and that's totally cool. For me, it's surface. Number one is surface.
So let me just add to that now, saying that we now look as cards as like fine art, right? Because we have investors and it goes into auctions and stuff like that. Because I think the fact that we look at it as fine art, centering does matter, right? And to the opposite side of what he's talking about, right? Because you're not going to buy a framed picture by Van Gogh or Monet or whoever else and it's off-centered, or a picture that was taken by a famous photographer, it's off-centered. You don't like that. It doesn't look good. I think that rings true for cards as well, because cards go through auction houses. You get what I'm trying to say there.
It's right?
So I think that kind of carries over into it.
Yeah.
But Rich is 100. I agree with you, Rich. I absolutely agree with you. If it's for your own personal collection, that's for your personal collection.
Totally fair approach. I met a guy at the National. This was the Atlantic City National, the last one that you were at as well, but we didn't meet there, obviously. And I remember talking to this guy. We were just both looking in at someone else's table, and he had a card, and I could tell he was excited. I said, "Oh, what'd you buy?" He goes, "Oh, I just bought I think it was a PSA 7 OC Gretzky rookie, or it was an important card." And I
Topps
said,
or O-Pee-Chee.
I don't remember. Probably O-Pee-Chee. I don't remember though. But whichever one it was, we started talking, and he basically said that he searches, he looks for cards that have that OC qualifier on PSA labels because he gets them for such a good price. He goes, the card is still in great condition. It's just off-centered, and I don't care about that. I'm like, I love that that's your approach. Number one, I love it because there's a market for these cards, right? Which we want there to be, but also because that's his approach. That's what he likes. He likes a card with great corners, edges, surface. If it's off-centered, doesn't bother him. Who knows? Maybe he's changed his stance since then. That was 2018 or so. But in any event, not everybody cares so much about sending. I want to say to Gizmo Greg, congrats on hitting the McDavid Jambalaya. I want one of those cards. So you want to know what to do with it? Send it my way, buddy. Send it my way, Gizmo Greg. Echo Troy's message here. Congratulations. I'd keep it, but I'm a collector. So would I. Brian says, I pre-grade all my submissions and do about 90% of what they are doing and do about 90% of what they are going to give. Awesome.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure what he means by that. That's why I was sort of stuck. But let's see what he if he writes back. Lapper. I'm not going to skip the comment if you ask me to skip the comment. Lapper says, what does it mean to be the best grader? Yeah, see, that's another good, I don't know, is there such a thing? Is that even accessible at this point in time? What
does it mean to be the best grader?
Do we mean grading company, or do we mean the best grader in the whole industry?
Okay.
I don't know if this is
so that's a loaded question, because there are some graders that are not graders anymore. Right? There's Mike Baker, who does his own thing now, right? There's Andy that works for CSG. There's a lot of other guys that are not in the business anymore, and some of them are in different companies. Best graders are ones that have held all the great cards, and I like someone that's not arrogant about it, that is willing to learn, but has the Rolodex knowledge and can do something not quickly, but can explain to you. That's where you're the best grader. If you can explain to me the difference, then I feel like you understand and can. It's one of those things where you truly have learned something when you can teach it to someone else. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, good comments. Good. Yeah, it's a tough question because it could be focused on the company, the person, like you said, Mike Baker, who does his own. He's not really doing it. Well, I guess he is doing it, but he's grading the grade. in any event, let's keep on going. Mark Santucci, buy the card, not the grade. Definitely. Big Harv says, what is David's opinion of CSG and some of the other smaller graders? So we've talked at length now about CSG, but what about some of the other smaller, and by smaller, I think we mean like newer, a lot of these up and coming or startup and companies that have joined. What do you think? And this was on the list of, this was one of my questions that I wanted to talk to you about. So maybe I'll pose my question now along with Big Harv's, which was, again, your thoughts on these new grading companies and their chances of survival, and what do they need to do to survive. So I'll let you kind of address all that, David.
Sure. I think one of the most important things, and I said this to you earlier before we even got onto the show, and I'm going to be very clear to all the people that are watching right now, it is super important that I do not influence your decision of what company to use at all. And I think that that's number one, the most important thing. I can give you my opinion offline for some. I don't want to poo-poo on any of the companies because it's a business and they're trying to make money, and I get what they're trying to do. And if they want to talk with me and I can help them, I would love to do that. But I will tell you that the ones that I use for right now are SGC, PSA, BGS, CSG. Those are the ones that I use. Those are the ones that are accepted at all the auction houses for right now. There's always a learning curve. There's the other companies that are out there. There's I don't want to call them out because then it may, but there's other ones. There's HGA. I'll say HGA because that one is, people are waiting until September 29th to kind of see their technology, to see how they are doing things. I think it's important that you learn from your mistakes as a grading company, right? You're going to take your lumps for the first couple of years, but you got to take them and you got to be able to learn from them, and you have to be able to get better. And if you plateau and you're not getting better, that's a problem for me. I think that comes for every company, but also we don't want to have market oversaturation. And right now we're at close to 18 or 20 grading companies. That could be too much. Jeremy, I would love to hear you as well. 18 to 20 companies. I think there's a niche for a lot of the different ones, right? But 18 to 20 companies is a little too much.
Oh, I agree. I think it's way too much. I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. One, and I've said this before on the show, is that, I think the incumbents, we're always going to have the incumbents. And to me, the incumbents are those four, even though CSG is new. And even though I'm not a huge fan of the label, I still think that they're here to stay. SGC even though they're under some new management since their old days, they're reputable. They seem to be doing a good job. PSA, BGS, I think they're all here to stay. Then you've got everybody else. And I categorize everybody else in the same bucket. Now there may be levels within there, but then I think, 10 years down the road, how many of those are going to be left? My guess, and this, I reserve the right to be wrong here, of course, but my guess is like 2, maybe 3. And then I want to qualify that by saying, I think about professional services firms. You look like big accounting and business, like the Deloittes, the KPMGs, the PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMGs. That's the big four. Those are the big four. But you also have these regional firms that service their own communities and their own cities, their own towns. Some of them are just in their own country. So you do have the opportunity for those regional services as well, who have a loyal following because everybody knows everybody, or the people in those neighborhoods, or those people in those geographies know the owners of those companies. They're out at their local shows. So I think you're going to see a lot of these small companies survive for a while, but are they going to get market share? Are they going to scale to the degree that they want to, or are they going to be content with their regional market? Is that going to be enough for them to feed their families and have a staff and all that? I don't know the answer to that. If not, they're going to go away one way or another. Maybe the good ones that have a real neat competitive advantage or differentiating factor will get bought by one of the incumbents, perhaps. It can go in many different directions. But if you take this regional piece out of it, I'm going to go back to, you've got the big four, which you have in the world of accounting and professional services. You have the big four in card grading, and then I think you could see a couple others that are going to last. And I think that race is sort of up in the air for all the current companies to compete for that. And maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. I don't know, but it's certainly not 15 more. I don't see that being the way that things shake out. My
Well
thought.
said. Yeah, I don't see past the big four, 2 or 3 at the end. I think that's really, and it's because they may fill a certain niche or a niche, whatever you want to say, right? I think those are the ones that'll probably end up working out in the end. And I think what's also important is that the big ones are also looking at the other ones and seeing what are they offering that we're not offering, that they're taking part of our market share, right? Maybe that's something that they need to add. I always look at things of how can I do things better? Just because I'm making so much more money, not me in general, but me in specific, but the PSAs of the world, how come they're making so much more money? Not how much. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. But what specifically do they have that these people are using, and maybe possibly adding it to their service?
Yeah, totally right. There's the potential for that, and it seems like a lot of these new companies, they have their, I don't want to use the word gimmick because that has a negative connotation, and I don't think that's what it is. I've heard people call certain things gimmicky, but they have their differentiating factor, right? And something that sets them apart. And I think that that's going to be whoever has the best one of those will, I think, have the best either chance of survival or successful exit plan, which could go either way. We're going to go to some comments, David. Joe Perot says, CSG label looks better when the subs are present, less empty white space, which I 100% agree with that comment, Joe. Brian Basketballs goes with Surface, where I'm on the same page, says Surface is eye appeal. I 100% agree with that, especially as far, because to me, Surface is focus or registration. To me, that 100%. Joe says, and the plastic of the slab is buttery. I know Joe loves his CSG slab, and I've seen one too, and I think they're very nice as well. Mark Santucci says, what do you two do with very expensive cards? Example, George Brett, Ricky Henderson, rookie one-touch, screw down or top loaders. For me, Mark, I go with a top loader until I get it slabbed, but eventually a card like that, I would get slabbed. How about you, David?
Yeah, I've had my hands on hundreds of them, and they've all come out of top loaders. So I'm going to tell you, a top loader is the best way to go. The one touch more for the newer modern cards. I don't use them as much for the older vintage. Listen, Jeremy, you and I, we're bald-headed men. We don't have any hair left. We're older guys. We know that the top loaders are the easy. Like we can do it all with our eyes closed, right? So it's the comfortability and just the fact that we can do it, and we know we're not going to mess up a corner or mess up an edge or anything by putting it in a top loader. Did you get what I was trying to get there? Sorry.
Yeah. No. I do get it for sure. Okay, I'm sorry, and I was just reading a comment here. This is an interesting comment here, David. I'm curious on what you say. Has there ever been a grading company that put the numerical grades on the back of the slab, but the specific card data on the front? Sometimes I feel the numbers distract me from the card.
So you and I both know the answer to that question. BGS used to do that. I mean, some of their older slabs had the numbers on the back.
Subs.
Well, does he mean like a 9 on the front, but then the specific subgrades on the back?
David, I think what DR is saying is all the numbers on the back, no grade on the front. I think the answer to the question is no. I've never seen that. Maybe some company that came and went really quick did. And I think that that it wouldn't really work, because a lot of cards get sold, and the first thing people want to look at is the card and the grade, and that needs to be in the same image. So I just don't think it would work, but I definitely understand the comment that it can be distracting to look up. You look at a slab card, your eyes are going from slab or from label to card, right? You turn it over, you look up, like you're assessing the whole unit. So I get the comment. It's a fun comment to talk about. Anything further on that from you?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah, I was just thinking the whole BGS piece is that the way they used to have the numbers on the back of some of their old slabs. But yeah, what you're saying talks about that makes perfect sense.
Brian Basketballs lets us know that he just pre-graded prior to submitting to HGA and was able to hit 24 of the 32 cards. Final grades ranging from 8.5 to 9.5. No flawless 10s. good for you. That's maybe if David's ever looking for an assistant on Guess the Grade, Brian Basketballs can send in his resume for that. Let's see what Lapper says. I didn't mean for it to be a loaded question. SGC 10 versus PSA 10, which is better? BGS 9.5 versus SGC, which is better? The market acceptance is PSA. Why? Because we pay a premium. I mean, I think he answers his own question at the end there. But do you have?
No, he's still asking us. He's still asking us those other questions, which you and I can easily talk about. But
no, and I want you to, if you're willing to, David, I want to hear your opinion on which is better, SGC. Yeah, I'll just go through those one at a time if you don't mind and speak to them.
Here we go. PSA 10 now currently you cannot have one issue on it at all. Not a one. An SGC 10. I still have seen submissions that I've put in for people for pre-grades, and they've still gotten 10s. They still are allowing for very, very faint print lines on the back, very, very faint print lines on the front, or very small dimples on the back. I would tell you the SGC on the back, they still are allowing little things, but PSA front and back have to be perfect. So I think that answers that question. BGS 9.5 and SGC 9.5. BGS 9.5 is still seen. Remember, there's a wide range of a 9.5. I mean, depending on which part of the which part are 9s and which parts are 9.5s or 10s, right? You can still be within a range and still get a 9.5. I actually still see with BGS still being a stricter grader than SGC on the 9.5 there. It's getting closer. I feel like there's with a 9.5, you can allow for a bigger issue, like a bigger printing error or a little like tiny dimple ding that's not hurting its eye appeal, right? But you can hold it back like this and not see it from there. But when you look underneath the magnifying lens, you can then see it. That would give me a 9.5. With BGS, some of the cards, I from what I see and what I work with, when you put it under the lens and you don't see it, and you don't see it for the BGS 9.5. I'm trying to get to the point of that. Basically, that just BGS still is a little bit higher than SGC. And then is there another one? No, I think that's it, right?
No, good stuff. Good stuff.
Just those two.
Yeah. Okay, no, great question, Lapper, as well. And even at the end, which is better, the market acceptance is PSA. Why? Because we pay a premium. Well, yeah, that's it. We, being the greater hobby, pays for the PSA slab. It's just the way it is, and that's based on their brand equity. Really simple as that. Okay, Troy says, never knew there were 20 grading companies. They are all not going to survive. I agree. Big Harv says, is there a market for a company that is strictly an authenticator, or does slabbing only for people that want to provide a higher level of protection from the sleeve and top loader? So I'll take this one, Dave, and let you know that I know PSA does have strictly an authentication service. You can just ask them to authenticate your card and they will do that. They don't need to grade it. I'm sure other companies do that too. And I do believe that there are companies that are now just in the slabbing game, not the grading, or I don't know if they authenticate or not, but I do believe that I do think that one or more of these new grading companies could end up being simply a slab company where you're not grading. Hopefully you're authenticating, but you're at least protecting and providing a nice presentation for the card. And maybe you're even customizing what that looks like for your customer. So anything to add to that, David?
The company that does that right now or is starting to do it was HGA. They do the just slabbed ones, and people are happy with the way that they look. So that's great. I think it's a great market for people that don't care about a number. They just want to protect the card.
Yeah, and depending what comes out of what their AI actually looks like is and does, those can almost be two separate businesses for them. HGA grading with AI, and they might have a division that's just, hey, decorative slabs for your collecting enjoyment. There's nothing. We buy one touches and top loaders too. There's nothing wrong with that at all, I don't think.
Agreed.
One for the task. Glad you appreciate the accountant talk there. Rich Frank says, if you grade tough, I believe the market will notice. You also need marketing, though. You also need marketing in there as well, I believe. But I think the point is well taken. DR says, do you think that we will ever see a franchise retail grading footprint? Maybe open small storefronts in target markets and staff the stores by graders eliminates the risk of mailing cards. So I don't think you're going to see that. But the closest I think you will see is what we're seeing right now with CardScore. Now, CardScore, the founder was on this show a few weeks ago, and John Yob, and he did say that, we don't consider ourselves to be graders. They are scorers. It's a different service altogether. Recommend if you want to go watch that episode. But they are putting their CardScore machines into LCSs across the country, being the United States, maybe Canada too by now. And I think they already have I think it's 250 machines. I don't remember exactly, but a significant amount are out there. So it's more of a crowdsourced opinion on the eye appeal ranking of your card out of 100. So something similar, and maybe they will. And I know they do have plans to get into authentication and slabbing with full grading. So it could get there through the CardScore banner. Actually, any comments on that, David?
Yes, I see what he's trying to get at. Could the fact that possibly I think Nat said that they're going to be collecting submissions in the New York or New Jersey area, newer place opening up. I think that's a good piece. Would it make sense to have the retail grading footprint? I don't know if that makes sense, Chat. I don't know if I've thought about that enough. DR's got great questions, because I see CardScore like you do as scoring, not grading, and it's not the same thing. So if DR's looking for an actual grading company, that could be something that they move towards. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It just, is there enough market share? Does it make enough sense to be actually really do that?
Yeah, I don't see it happening until it's done by AI computer or something like that, because otherwise how does PSA or whatever grading company standardize things and ensure adherence to these standards? I just see I see that just not happening. I can see them having office, a few headquarters, obviously the California, maybe wherever, New York, Miami, Hong Kong, Toronto, something like that. I could see that happening, but I don't see there being a franchise grading, not from one of the big incumbents. I don't see them taking that on. I just don't think I don't think that business model works unless it's done by machine. That's a whole other thing, though. So Lapper reminds everybody to hit that like button, guys. If you are enjoying this discussion, this interactive discussion, hit the thumbs up button. And you know what? If you're not enjoying it, hit that thumbs up button. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That doesn't work. Double thumbs up. All right, whatever. Either way, hit
it. I'm just saying, hit that thumbs up button one way or another. But more importantly, tell a friend. Enjoy the show. Come back every Saturday if you're available, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, Brian's. I think he's talking about when the grade is on the back of the card. He says that's like taking someone home at closing without seeing their face.
This is why this is after hours sports card live, right?
Exactly. This is the late show. Exactly. David Kaplan says the thumbs joke never gets old. So it's getting old, David. Is that what you're telling me? It's getting old. Mark Santucci is enjoying the discussion. Thank you, Mark. So here's a question that I was going to ask you. And I mean, I'm just going to ask it as it might sound silly to the audience, guys. So please don't penalize me for this. But David, is grading actually subjective?
Okay. In parts of it, it can be subjective. For someone that's not experienced, right? Because they could just say, "Oh, it's a 9 because it looks like a 9," right? But as you get better with doing it, it's not subjective, and I think it also leads into something that we were talking about before, the whole AI piece, like the technology, bringing the technology in as the backup to be able to validate what you're talking about. I think is an important piece and the next step for things. So is grading subjective right currently now? Not for me and a lot of the graders, but I could see how someone would think that way, especially if they've received a grade that they did not like and they did not agree with. I think that's where that grading is subjective piece comes up with. Do you agree? I mean, do you agree with that's when it comes up?
I mean, I think, and I agree with, just all I can do is reflect on my own self and how I behave in certain circumstances. And if I was a grader, you have bad days at any job you're in. No, I mean it, right? You do. And
yes, of course, right? Yeah.
You can have a bad day at home. You can have a bad day in some other aspect of your life. You're gonna lose focus, but you're still gonna go to work, and you might not perform at the same level every day. Look at professional athletes. The best players have off games. We don't know why. We think it's because they're lazy or they're spoiled rich kids. Really, they may have, something could be going on in their personal life. And I'm not using this. This is not an excuse, but we say is grading subjective. I believe that the grading standards that all the companies have documented for internally and public facing should take out the subjectivity. It should, but there are still people doing the job, and people have, it doesn't matter how trained you are. You're still going to have people that are better at it and worse at it. I think you are
correct.
So it's a tough question, but jump in, David.
Yeah, let me. As you're saying things, I'm thinking of them, and I'm going, okay. So when I was trained by different people, some of them were better at training me than others because they didn't. Some of them understood what they were talking about, and some of them couldn't explain what they were talking about. And I'm trying to say this so I don't sound rude or disrespectful, and also trying to hammer the point home of, is it subjective? It really isn't. And I'm struggling with, because I lost my train of thought. Can you go back to what you were just saying?
Well, hold on. While you think about that, I want to go to Rich Frank's comment here. He says, absolutely subjective. A computer would never give a 10. There is no perfect. Well, no one has said, not even PSA says that a 10 is meant to be perfect. That, and I'm not going to pick on you, Rich Frank, but you're saying that 10 is perfect in this comment. PSA does not say that their 10 is a perfect card. If you look at the standards, it's not meant to be it might be a perfect card, but it's not supposed to be. A 10 does not have to be perfect. So to say that no computer would ever give out a 10 because there's no perfect, it all depends how you program that computer. What are the tolerances? So that's just not I just think, Rich Frank, in this case, this comment is I don't want to say it's wrong, but it's just not applicable to the hobby, really. Now,
I think he also understands what you're saying.
Well,
because
I don't know.
there is a little bit of leeway, right? And I don't think he sees that.
The comment doesn't tell me that he knows, that he agrees with what I'm saying, but that's fine. I'm not trying to pick on it. I'm just saying that it's important that people understand that PSA 10s, BGS 10s, they're not, even a BGS 10 that is pristine can get better. Can still get better into Black Label. A PSA 10 is gem mint. There are going to be PSA 10s that are pristine, but there will also be ones that are gem. The PSA 10 is still a range. So of course it's not going to be a perfect card. So to say there's no perfect, it doesn't really matter that there's no perfect. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Sure. Okay, great. There's no perfect. Doesn't mean there's no PSA 10s. Those two comments can live at the same time. Okay. With that now said, did you come back to where you were, or
No, I lost that train of thought. Sometimes I gotta, as you get older, your brain goes all over the place sometimes with things, and I've been grading throughout the day. So, and it's also just so you know, there, sir, it's like 1:30 in the morning. My time.
It is late. It's okay.
And the dogs wake up in a couple. But I'm good. It's just I'm thinking and just trying to think about it. No, it's totally gone.
It's all good. It's all good, Dave. Don't even worry about it. It happens to me every Saturday night. I have thoughts in my head. I forget them, and I try to cover my tracks one way or another. That's the thing about live broadcasting. You just have to, David, you just have to be willing to let it happen and not not beat yourself up about it. I do it every
I
night.
tell my students, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. Right.
There you go.
And out of all the podcasts I've done, because yours is live, I've made the most mistakes and just totally just blanked on stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then I read this Rock Latex that wrote the subjective as a strike zone is for baseball. Rock Latex. Let's just talk about the fact of that they have the actual technology to show you whether or not they're right or wrong. And they go through like a stringent, like all those umps, they're constantly tested, and they don't get to be in big games if they're not doing if their accuracy is not up there. And that's what I wanted to say. I now got back to it. So you talked about subjectivity, and that's why you have two graders look at a card, and then if their number is too far off by more than a half point or a point, it goes to a senior grader. So I think that cuts out a lot of the subjectivity that people really worry about, especially in a time where you're spending a decent amount of money to get these cards graded. You don't want just one person looking at it. You need multiple people. And I think it also cuts out the whole, you've had a bad day, you lost your girlfriend or your boyfriend, right? And you go into work and you're upset and you just going through the cards really quick. It's not going to happen. In fact, PSA, I think your percentage that you're allowed, your tolerable percentage has to be less than like 3%. Off by 3% on average. So I mean, they hold you to high standards, which I think is really, really important. And I think that we need to talk. I mean, I think it's important that people know that as well. It kind of cuts out that subjectivity piece.
Yeah, no, fair enough. If it goes through that process, I agree with you. I want to address Lapper's comment here saying it's pretty hard to keep a set of standards clearly defined and determined by a human. And that's a really astute comment, because I think what he's talking about is interpretation a lot of the times. Because I think about other sets of standards we have in society. We have tax laws. We have also every body of law, every single different discipline within the faculty of law has their standards, and they're always being developed. And if you think about a judge's job is not always clear cut. Unless, it's easy, where it is clear cut because the precedents are just obvious. But in many cases, they need to judge on something that has never been judged on before. There are things that don't have precedent, and they need to come up with that judgment, even though there is a set of standards that is laid out for them as to how you make that judgment, right? There is a process that they go through. Now, two different judges may come up with different opinions on the application of the law to this particular set of facts and circumstances. Same thing in grading. You can have two different people that are trying to apply the same standards that are going to interpret things differently. They're going to come up with two different opinions based on that same set of facts and circumstances. Now, does that mean that it's subjective? Yeah, I think there is some subjectivity. The subjectivity is in the application of the standard. That is because it's human. So I do think there is that level of subjectivity because we are human, and you can't get away from that. But I think to reconcile this with David, with your comment being it really isn't, is that it shouldn't be. There is one set of standards, and these should be adhered to. But as has been said, it's really difficult to do that. And it's difficult not just it's like, why are we so tough on card graders when judges who are keeping peace in the land, are or trying to, at least, they don't go through quite that level of scrutiny. Like, God forbid they go become card graders. You want a tough job, judge? Go be a card grader. Let's see how you like that.
Or school teacher.
Right. Exactly. So I don't know, just fun. David Kaplan says we should get graders' notes then. Like, yes, of course we should. Of course we should. Do they take notes? I don't know. This came up with Nat Turner, and, he said, yeah, makes sense, but the price is going to go up because it's going to take more time, and now it's got to be standardized and all these things. I don't remember his answer. I'm paraphrasing that. Don't quote me on that. But my thoughts are that, sure, slip them in there. I'd love to see them, but I guess there's some friction that comes with that.
So let's talk. Can we talk a little bit more about that just for a hot second? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Some of the newer grading companies are doing that. They're telling you where they see the errors when you get the card back. Either it's in a little sheet, or sort of like Grader's Notes, because they're using a high-end scanner or their AI, whatever they want to call it, right? And it does have on there where they see the issues. I don't think that I think that Nat understands that, and I think that PSA is probably figuring out because they're the standard along with the other three, right? I think that they're all trying to figure out a way to be able to incorporate something like that. I think they're trying to do a lot of different things at once, right? But I think that once they see that other companies are using it, I think that they're going to try to adopt something to that effect. It would just make sense, right? Long term looking at it, I think it absolutely makes sense that there should be something like what David is talking about.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, I want to go to this comment by Rich Frank here where he says, but gem mint should mean gem. Okay, so I have two comments on that. The first one is, says you. The second comment is, gem is defined how the company grading it defines gem to be. I don't believe that there is a universal definition of the term gem mint within sports and trading cards. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think there is. I just tried to see if I could find it. And, I don't know that it actually exists, but someone please correct me if I'm wrong. And when I do search it, it takes you to ISA grading. So a company came up with their definition. So gem mint is a human, it's a standard that is, I don't want to say arbitrary, but it's defined by the person who's stating it. It's not, there is no universal. So really, it's like, yeah, gem mint.
Do you want it to be though?
What?
Do you want it to be?
Do I want what to be?
Gem mint universal.
Do I want gem mint to be universal? I don't know. I mean, gosh, I need to think. I can't answer. That's one where if I answer now,
I stumped you finally, Jeremy. Look at that. I got you to.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, it's. If you were to ask me, it's the same thing. I don't know if I really want it to be like that, but what I'm trying to do, it is get to the point where maybe some of the standards are the same throughout most of the companies. I'm trying to get to that educational piece of either helping them or helping the community so that we're all kind of on the same page, because it feels like we're not.
Yeah, David. I mean, until we have a sort of centralized regulatory body in the hobby, which will probably never happen, we can't get there. I'm going to go back to my accounting analogy. When auditors go in and audit financial statements, I'm not talking about tax and that. I'm talking about financial statement audits. The different firms all go in with their own approach to audit. Now they follow generally accepted auditing standards and this and that, but they take their own, they have their own methods, if you will. They have their own tools that they use. And they, at the end of the day, they follow the same standards. They use similar tools to do that, but they are governed. There is a high level of regulation. And now with Sarbanes-Oxley and all these different things going on, it's impossible. Oh God, I go through this in my professional life and it's a pain in the butt. Okay. It's a pain because of the regulation. So do I want there to be regulation in the hobby? I don't know. I need to think about that further as far as grading companies go. Do I want there to be one grade of 10 that means the same thing to all the grading companies? I don't know. I think that's not innovation. That is not a sign of innovation. It's not a sign of competition. It doesn't give you an advantage to have something different than somebody else. So I don't know that we need a standard across the board. That's why I'm just not sure, because I think we need it in some areas of society, but some, maybe like cards, we don't need it. So that's kind of why I took longer to get there. But back to the point, and the comment is that it's up to the company to define what that is, because there is no universal definition. So when Rich Frank says, but gem mint should mean gem mint, says you, Rich Frank, and anyone else who thinks that way, right? Says you, which is fine. You're entitled to that. So use the company that you think puts a gem mint on their card. And if the rest of the hobby doesn't follow that and assign as much value to that company as you think they should, yeah, well, them's the breaks, right? That's the world we live in until it changes.
Yes.
Until it changes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. So okay, we can. There's lots of comments and questions. I'm sure I've stirred up a few here. I'm good to keep going. You good to keep going, Dave?
I'm ready. Hit me.
All
with
right.
them.
I'm gonna read some. We'll stop on the ones that I'd like to stop on all of them, but we just don't have time. Steve says, to play devil's advocate, how can centering, edges, corners, surface, etc. be subjective? I can see an argument there for centering and edges, corner, surface. How can it be subjective? It's the degree of flaw and where that falls on the grading scale. That's how I can see it being subjective. Agreed. Rich Frank says, but I do understand PSA never said 10 is perfect, and I love the point of your guest. I trust the ruling of the field as long as there is no proof. Fair comment, Rich Frank. Steve Sir says the grader or computer would have to take that into consideration. Okay, sorry, I'm out of context. We'll keep going. Talking about the strike zone. MLB umpires still have different strike zones, though. They are all not the same. Same with graders. It's a valid comparison. I guess it depends on the height of the player, right? Where are the knees? That these things do move around, different angles.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not a valid one. I'm not. I'm just saying that similar to how certain graders are either let go or they're not used in certain ways, right? They have a certain percentage, just like Angel Hernandez, I'll throw it out there, always has one of the lowest grades, so he doesn't do some of the certain games and stuff like that because of the fact that he makes a lot of very clear-cut errors with his strike zone. Sorry, you got into baseball, and I'll talk baseball for hours. Sorry about that.
All good. So here's a new grading company I'm not familiar with. DSG has a QR code that allows you to see where their notes are on the flaws on the grader. The grader. Same with TGT, Transparent Grading Team. Pittsburgh, who comes and watches, is a part of that. They do that. He showed me their example at the National. I thought it was very good as far as something that differentiates them and could be. I think it's a really it's transparent, just like is in their name. So good call out on that, Big Harv. Troy says, okay, so this is where Troy, PSA could offer the option to download the grader's notes for an additional fee. So I agree they could, but by saying that, we are now changing their business model. We are adding staff. We are adding technology. We're adding processes. And I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm just saying it's not as easily as just saying, oh, they could do this. Yes, they could, but it's not like it's just something that they could take their current process and just add that to without any additional investment, planning, time, all these sorts of things. Okay. So, there's more thought in it than just saying they could do that. Although I hear you, it's plausible, but it's not just an automatic based on what they're already doing. Let's see. Birds on the Bat said, grader's notes are a wonderful idea, but so unlikely to ever happen. The process is already slow as is. Adding notes to each card would make that card grading take even longer. Agreed. Plus, a grader has their notes, final grade, assign it, send it off to the next department for slabbing, whatever. But what if they do with those notes? They just tape it to the slab. You got to think about the actual process. And then all of a sudden there's 20 slabs in there. A grader's notes gets loose. Which card is this for? Well, okay, so you're going to name the card, probably put the serial number on there, but these things all do take time. So David Kaplan says CGC Comics lets you access grader's notes online. So they have that in place, which is really great. Rich Frank, trusting the ruling on the field. Birds on the Bat says exactly. Plus PSA, I believe, coined the term gem mint, meaning it quite literally by definition got to define it. Yeah, exactly. So good to know if they're the first ones to use it, which brings me back to the point before that was made about the label on CSG or CGC Comics. I was wondering, weren't they the first? Like, what did they had nothing to compare it to. And I believe, whereas with cards, we've got lots to compare it to because they were late to the game, right? So anyway, sorry, just to go back in time there. Bird says, plus PSA. Okay, sorry, I already did that one. Birds on the Bats all over the place here. Oh, that's a double post. Interesting. Birds on the Bat here says you're paying for them for exactly what they give you. You may want more, but that's not what you're paying for. They only owe you what they agreed to. That's right. Steve Sir says, I'm starting the Federal Bureau of Sports Card Collecting. You wouldn't be the first that wanted to do that. Lapper says, ultimately, machine learning should determine the same set of standards and grade in a similar way. The only thing the hobby seems to want is consistency. And possibly,
he's right.
Yeah.
You know that he's right. Consistency is what we want.
That's what we want. Exactly. No, I know he's right. I'm thinking to myself, will it happen? And it will only happen.
That's what I'm here for. I want to do that. I want to do that for people.
But you're not working. You're not the lead grader at all the grading companies, right?
You're right. You're right. But there's ideas in my head, and there's things that I want to talk with different people about. There's got to be a way. I know I'm only one person, but I know I'm not the only person that feels this way, right? He just said it himself. I think that we got to discuss consistency, and I understand that there's a lot of people that are in there, but I think that over time, I think that could happen. Some sort of it, maybe just a little bit better. I don't know.
Maybe
I'm
finally
just
caught that
sort of thing.
Finally caught that fly that's been bugging me all night.
Did you get it?
I finally got it.
It only took 2 hours.
I got it with that last swoop across. Okay. Criminal Minds says, forget about PSA, BGS, and every other grading company taking advantage of all of us. Let's all stop grading. We'll see how fast these companies drop their prices. Good luck with that, Criminal Mind. I mean, start a protest, bro. Start a protest and see how that goes. It's just, we're too deep in for that to happen at this point. And
we're like 24 years in at this point.
And you have to keep in mind why grading came about in the first place. It came about to solve a problem, and that problem was that the internet became a thing, and people were buying cards sight unseen, and they needed some way to understand. That's why grading became a thing in the first place. That's the main reason why it started.
But also the registry piece, right? People wanted to, they like the competitive
later. That came later, right?
Yes, a little, but not that far after. I mean, but Nat's talked about it. That's the reason why they eventually want to make sure that they open up the lower tiers, because that's they want people to be able to make their sets.
Yeah,
right?
And you're right.
That's an important
I
piece
agree with you
as well.
It's one of the reasons why PSA has a good foothold on a big piece of the pie, because there's so many participants in that set registry, and people by nature are competitive and want to get as high up as they can, especially people that have means, are competitive to flex, and it's nothing wrong with that. Okay, birds on the bat. Although, yes, I agree it would be ideal to get notes. It's just not pragmatic. I prefer they don't give notes because it would clog the system. It certainly would, but maybe they have anyway.
What about if you get the printout from the AI? You get the numbers.
Yeah, hey, any more information than we're already getting, I think people would appreciate, but it just has to be done properly by the grading company, right? Just has to be. Rich Frank, appreciate that. Big Harv says, is there any allowance for cards to get graded based on known issues in printing, especially in a lot of the cards from the 50s through 70s when QA was an afterthought? That's a great question. And I know the Gretzky rookie with the O-Pee-Chee edges is one of those examples that PSA does kind of overlook. But what can you tell us about that, David?
Just two quickly. One is I think it's the Bo Jackson rookie for Topps football. There's a known issue on the front. We talked about this just a couple days ago. And the other one is a Ray Allen rookie from 96 Topps. There's a blue line that they still allow and still give PSA Gem Intense for, because it was on 90% of the cards. Also, I believe the Shaquille O'Neal rookie from 92 Topps. That one's another one that has a known issue on the back. Looks almost like it's like not a double printing, but like out of focus. And they still give that one. There's like the yellowing on there's the jersey. You know how the Magic jersey has the pinstripes on it, yeah. Right? There's a little bit of yellow that comes through. They still allow that to come through, and that's sort of a misprint, and they allow that as well for PSA 10. So yes, there is some allowance there with certain cards and certain prints that are on a high percentage of them. Yeah,
it's like you probably know the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky rookie. He's got that yellow dot on his shoulder, which was on the right shoulder if you're looking at the card, and that's every copy has it. It's a telltale sign of a real copy.
Yes.
Some fakes have it too, but it's a printing flaw though. It's like something got in there, right? But it doesn't change the grade of the card. I don't think it should. For me, I'm okay with it not. I also recently learned just last week that the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle has I think most of the and I also learned there's two types. There's where the black line in the bottom box, but there's a little printing flaw, right? You know how he's got the bat and he's like looking up like this. If you follow his eye line, his sight line into the blue background, there's a little white dot in there on like all the copies, which, is that a gem mint card? According to what, is that a pristine, a flawless card? Or is it okay because it was produced like that? To me, it's okay. If they're all like that, I'm okay with it.
Isn't that part of the hobby, though? Isn't that part of the story? Like, that's why we love what we're doing, because it's part of the story of the card, and that's the way all of them are. Now, if it wasn't that case, then that's a different conversation. But just like you said, just like most of the O-Pee-Chees are miscut improperly because they were using an inferior print cutter, right? So that you've got the jagged edges on the side. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. Yeah, for sure. Here's Game Time Gallery says, when grading cards containing relics like patches, etc., is the condition of the relic taken into account in the grade of the card? I've never thought of this question because, and I mean, I think David, what he might be getting at is like, is the relic, like I've seen some patches where there's a loose thread kind of just sticking out, right? And what do you do with that thread? To me, I want to snip it off because it takes away from the card. Now, am I altering the card if I snip off that little thread? And if I am, do I care? It's my card. I can snip it off if I want to. I'm not going to sell it. And if I do, no one's going to know the difference. How do you feel about that? I've never even thought about this before.
That's why most of those relic cards end up getting 9s or less, right? Because the fact of how the process of how they put the relic card in there, because it's usually foiling on the side, and that foiling usually gets dented or pushed in, and it causes them to not get the 10 because that's part of the edges. That's part of the card, right? It's part of the surface. So So how is the condition of the relic taken into account? Yes, it is part of the card. Do we all need to worry about Jeremy now trimming his, altering all of his hockey jersey cards? Possibly. We might need to worry about that. But no, in all seriousness, there are people out there that will cut off that little piece, right? And probably they try to submit it. And I see cards all the time that have them, and they don't sell for as much online because you can see the piece coming off and out of the card, and it's not desirable.
But
right?
is that
for some people?
okay?
For some people.
So I had a different interpretation of the question. I thought the condition of the patch, the fabric itself, let's say. But,
okay. I looked at it the other way. Sorry.
But I also hear though, like I've seen cards where the patch is in the patch window, but it doesn't cover the whole patch window, so you can see the back. And I hate when that happens. To me, that's just an eyesore when the patch doesn't fill the whole window. That's I really
that takes away part of the eye appeal, part of the surface. Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that's a surface issue that should come into play.
Yes,
but does it? Because are they grading that, or are they just grading the condition of the cardboard itself? Now, the other piece on this is that when we talk about the condition of a piece of memorabilia, I mean, hey, these are game used. They should be in poor condition. They should have scratch marks or blood stains or puck marks or whatever it might, depending on the sport, of course. But I can see that. Yeah.
Well, and now think about the way relics are, right? A lot of them aren't even from an actual game or from an event. They're just a piece of a jersey that they've cut and put on there. I mean, that's why that's why people are paying a premium for the original Upper Deck ones from the late 90s and early 2000s, because those were the actual real ones that the player wore in many cases. Thank you, Carvin, for all that work that you've done acquiring all those pieces, right? Because he did all that work and was a part of that. Because that makes them more valuable. It means something, not just like a new LaMelo Ball that has a jersey that he didn't wear and didn't even touch.
Yeah. All right, let me see if I had any more questions on my notes here. I think, boy, no, I think we covered off everything I had on my list. Troy says here, I'll bring up this comment. David, great insight there. Many in the hobby say it's hard to get a 10 on a thick card. It's because of the foiling on the edges and the patch window, right? Because you talked about, I think what you were talking about at the beginning of the response to that question, David, was the patch window itself and the foiling around the patch window oftentimes, which is, yeah, I mean, depending on how that die cut is done, you can see very faint creases in the corners of certain patch windows too. So to me, that isn't that is it's a circumstance of the card being a memorabilia card, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the condition of the memorabilia. But I think it's just that's not the issue here. The issue is, does it cause there to be any flaws in the card because the patch is there? However, I will stand by that one where the patch doesn't cover the whole patch window and you have a gap between the border of the patch window and the patch itself, or a stick piece or whatever, bat piece. And I'm like, oh God, you couldn't have just cut that patch bigger or placed it a millimeter to the left to cover that gap. In any event, okay, we're going to wrap up. We're at the 2-hour mark. I'll put it out there for any final questions or comments from the chat. Still going strong on the viewership, so thank you, everybody. David, while we wait to see if any final comments or questions come in, anything that you want to talk about that we haven't yet?
No, I mean, we've talked about a lot in 2 hours. This is a lot of conversation. This is great. I hope you eventually have me on again, maybe when PSA opens back up all their stuff and we can talk about what's going on there. I love to talk about all the different things there. And I just want to dispel we didn't talk about pop control. Did we talk about pop control?
We didn't. That could be a long one. That could be a long one.
No. All right, fine. Maybe the next show, part 2.
Let's hold off. But guys, just so you guys know, and we're not going to do this now. It's too late. But we were going to talk about basically David's thoughts on this perceived pop control going on. The grading companies grading tougher than ever before. We will have to save that for another time. So, okay. But just so you know, that was supposed to be on the agenda. But you guys peppered us with too many really great comments and questions tonight. Brian Basketballs, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you again, Brian. Latrell Spreewell says, why is PSA so harsh on grades for PMGs, red and green basketball?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
Because it's made out of metal. And because it's not that they're grading them harder. They have their standards and the cards naturally degrade while they were in the packs. You open up a new Metal Universe pack, they're naturally chipping off. Those were like the lower end cards back in the late 90s because they were just a cool technology that they were trying out, and it was for kids. It wasn't those were not expensive packs, and it's not that they're harsh. It's just the way that the cards were made. They're literally chipping off as you were opening the packs.
Yeah.
Do you remember opening them?
No, but I have a PMG from 97, and the edges chip. I've seen several copies. The edges chip. It is what it is. Let's go to this question though from the Currency Project. Says, do edges of thicker cards weigh heavier on the grade more so than standard 35-point stock cards? I have some thick relic cards with strange scuffing on the thicker edges, or is that considered surface?
Okay, I have to see that. So Currency, can you not right now, and we don't want to keep Jeremy and everybody on too late. Can you just follow me on Instagram, show me pictures so we can have a conversation about that? And then I maybe on my part 2 or next time I come on, I can explain that a little bit more. Is that okay, Jeremy, if we do that?
Fine by me, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
I need to see that because I don't want to make a blanket statement.
Fair enough. Big Harv says, does David know the amount of graders PSA has and how many they would need to keep up with the amount of cards that are submitted once they reopen the full range of services?
I do. So I do have some contacts with people that still are there. And I can only tell you that I think that somebody was talking about how many they just increased. Steve Sloan tells you how many all the time. I don't know the exact amount right now, but follow me, Big Harv. We can talk. We can discuss. I can share more of that because I don't know if everybody really cares about that. But yeah, I can get you some more information, hopefully.
No, it's a generous offer to invite people to DM you, and because it takes time. So I appreciate that you do that for the audience here tonight, David. A big unit reminds people to hit that thumbs up, that like button. Jeremy and David, thank you very much. Big unit. Thank you, Troy. Appreciate your time tonight. And that's it, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. If you stuck it through both shows, I greatly appreciate it. I'm back with back-to-back shows tomorrow night again. This was 6 shows. Believe it or not, I did 6 shows this weekend. I'm doing 6 shows this weekend, which is nuts. I recorded a short piece last night. I was on Hobby Hotline this morning, Sports Cards Live after hours. Tomorrow I've got Collectible Live at 7 o'clock Eastern on the Collectible YouTube channel, and then I'll be back on this channel for the big F1 Dynasty break with Steven and Carvin. So check that out. That's at 10 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night, where Steven will be breaking 50-plus boxes. I hope they're one-card boxes. Otherwise, it's going to take too long. But
it's going to take a while.
Of Topps Dynasty, which is a very nice product. So check that out tomorrow if you can. Behind the Tank says the backlog was 15 million cards as of 5 weeks ago. Thank you, Big Harv, for joining. Thank you, Currency Project. David, you hang tight right there. Everybody else, thanks again for joining. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow, if not next week. Have a great week ahead and enjoy your Sunday.